5 years, that's how long the cage sat empty for one man, while the world around him kept moving. Rematches in this sport usually happen within a year or two. Grievances are settled, scores are evened, and the sport moves on. This one didn't work that way. This rematch took 13 years to arrive, and by the time it does, July 11, 2026, International Fight Week, Las Vegas, the two men walking into that cage will barely resemble the fighters who first met in Boston in August of 2013. The question that hangs over this fight isn't about who was better then, it's about who is still here now and what that means. In the summer of 2013, Conor McGregor was 24 years old and had fought in the UFC exactly once. One fight, one finish against a man named Marcus Brimage. In just over 60 seconds, that performance earned him something almost no UFC newcomer earns on such a thin resume. A feature on Irish national television, a ride down the Las Vegas Strip with Dana White, and a reputation that preceded him everywhere he went. He arrived in Boston as the favorite. His opponent, a 21-year-old from Waianae, Hawaii named Max Holloway, had a 3-2 record inside the organization. He was by all reasonable measures a step in the right direction for a fighter still building towards something larger. Not a test, a checkpoint. What happened over those 3 rounds was a one-sided affair. McGregor landed 72 total strikes to Holloway's 32. He took 4 of 5 takedown attempts. Every judge scored it 30-27 or better. It was not a close fight. McGregor moved on to Dustin Poirier, to Dennis Siver, to Chad Mendes, to Jose Aldo in 13 seconds, to the lightweight title, to Floyd Mayweather, to more money than the sport had ever produced for a single fighter. His career became something the UFC had never seen before, and may never see again. Holloway stayed at featherweight and lost the next fight too, to Dustin Poirier. His record dropped to 3-3 in the UFC. There were genuine questions about whether he would last. He answered those questions over the following 10 years in a manner that is difficult to overstate. He went on a 13-fight win streak, he finished Brian Ortega with strikes, he stopped Jose Aldo twice, taking the featherweight title and then defending it 3 times before finally losing it to Alexander Volkanovski in late 2019. He went up to lightweight, fought for an interim title, lost, came back down, defended the featherweight belt again, lost to Volkanovski 2 more times, moved back up to lightweight, knocked out Justin Gaethje with 1 second left on the clock at UFC 300 in one of the most remarkable finishes the sport has ever produced, and won the BMF title, a symbolic belt that carries more weight than its detractors admit, because no one would have fought that particular Gaethje fight the way Holloway fought it. By March of 2026, Holloway had a record of 27-9. He had just dropped the BMF title to Charles Oliveira by decision at UFC 326. He was coming off a loss, heading into a welterweight debut against a man who hadn't competed since July 2021. The man who hadn't competed since July 2021 was Conor McGregor. At the end of the first round of his trilogy fight with Dustin Poirier, McGregor's lower left leg snapped, tibia and fibula. He went down at the bell. The fight was stopped by the ringside physician. That was the last time Conor McGregor competed in the UFC. He was 32 years old. What followed was 5 years of noise, social media arguments, a reality TV coaching stint, film work, legal proceedings, return dates announced, and quietly abandoned, a tested relationship with the UFC's anti-doping apparatus, and a body that had changed visibly and publicly. There was a period of time when it seemed genuinely possible that he would never fight again, not because of the injury, which healed, but because the machinery around a return never quite engaged fully, until UFC 329 was announced July 11, 2026, International Fight Week, T-Mobile Arena, McGregor vs. Holloway, a rematch that nobody had spent 13 years demanding, but that the sport somehow needed anyway. To understand what's actually at stake inside that cage, you have to look at what each of these men brings to it technically, and what time has done to them. Start with Holloway. The version of Max Holloway that arrives at UFC 329 is not the version that McGregor beat in 2013, and it is not even the version that won the featherweight title in 2017. The fighter that Holloway has become in the last 4 years is something closer to complete. His striking has evolved from a high-volume pressure style into something more layered. He still moves forward, still throws in combinations, but he reads range differently now. He sets up sequences, he creates the same shots repeatedly by establishing false patterns, and then deviating from them at the moment his opponent commits. His performance against Justin Gaethje at UFC 300 is worth examining not just for the last-second knockout, but for the 24 minutes and 59 seconds that preceded it. Against one of the most dangerous strikers the lightweight division has produced, Holloway stayed composed, absorbed pressure, and consistently found the right distance to land without being hit cleanly himself. He walked through moments in that fight that would have disrupted most fighters. When he was hurt, he didn't panic. When he was behind on the cards, he didn't abandon his game plan. That composure is something that comes with specific experience, and at 34 years old, Holloway has more of it than he has ever had. His jab has become the organizing tool of his offense. He throws it to measure, to distract, to create openings for his right hand. He moves his head off the center line after committing to strikes. He has developed what some coaches call a second-gear defensive sense, the ability to feel when a shot is coming and move his upper body marginally before it lands, taking the edge off even significant strikes. His ground defense is not what wins him fights, but it is not an exploitable weakness either. He has been taken down and has not been seriously threatened there in years. The loss to Ilia Topuria at UFC 308, a third-round finish by left hook, deserves attention here. Topuria is the best featherweight in the world, a technical knockout artist who finds the chin. The finish against Holloway was legitimate. Holloway was dropped and put away cleanly, but it was also a single shot in round 3 of a fight where Holloway had been competitive. It was not evidence of a structural vulnerability so much as evidence that even the best defensive fighters can be caught. The loss to Oliveira in March of 2026 was different. That was a decision, 5 rounds, and it was a fight where Holloway was out-grappled repeatedly. Oliveira's submission threat changes the terrain for anyone he faces, and Holloway spent significant energy defending clinch work and wrestling. He won moments. He lost the scorecard. He came out of that fight healthy but without the belt. Now he walks into a welterweight debut. 170 pounds, 25 pounds above his natural weight class. The question of whether that size benefits or hinders him is not fully answerable before the fight, but the logical read is that it helps him absorb damage, and that his cardio, which has been elite throughout his career, may be tested differently at a higher weight than it was at 145 or 155. Now look at McGregor. The McGregor that the sport saw before 2021 was built on a very specific and very unusual skill set. His left hand, his cross, thrown at unusual angles and with exceptional timing, accounted for most of his finishes. Jose Aldo in 13 seconds. Eddie Alvarez dropped twice. Donald Cerrone destroyed in 40 seconds. The punch itself was not the only thing. McGregor understood distance management in a way that made that punch available repeatedly. He fought at a range where most fighters feel comfortable, just outside touching distance, but where he could reach them and they could not comfortably reach him. His footwork was his first line of defense. He circled, pivoted, and manipulated opponents into lines where their right hands, the power weapon most fighters carry, could not find his chin. He gave up a lot against Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier when that footwork broke down or when he got tired. When he couldn't move, he was catchable. He also, even at his best, had a ceiling in terms of activity. He threw less volume than many of his contemporaries. His output in the Poirier trilogy was notably lower than what Poirier threw. He won through precision and the psychological weight his power carried, not through sustained pressure. 5 years removed from competition, what remains of that? It is an honest question. The broken leg healed, but a lower leg fracture of that severity in an athlete in his 30s carries legitimate concerns about structural recovery, specifically around the ankle and lower chain movement patterns that are foundational to the pivot and weight transfer in boxing. Whether McGregor's footwork is what it was is not something that can be determined from social media footage. It can only be determined in the cage. His body composition changed significantly during the layoff. He put on considerable muscle, which attracted attention and comment. Heavier fighters do not always move the same way lighter versions of themselves moved. Whether McGregor at welterweight, which is where this fight takes place, can still operate at the distance management his game requires is the central physical question of this fight. He also brings something that no physical observation can fully account for, and it would be dishonest to admit it. He has ended fights very quickly in this cage against very good fighters, and that memory lives in the sport. It does not guarantee anything at 37, but a left hand that put Aldo down in 13 seconds, that dropped Alvarez twice in a single round, that specific capability does not always diminish on the same timeline as endurance or output. So the matchup at its core is this: a highly active, technically refined striker who has been competing continuously against a fighter of exceptional natural ability who has not competed in 5 years, is returning at a higher weight class, and whose physical output ceiling and footwork are both genuine unknowns. The distance at which this fight lives matters enormously. If Holloway can dictate the tempo and keep pressure on McGregor through rounds 2, 3, and beyond, he neutralizes the knockout threat simply by making McGregor expend effort to create it. If McGregor can manage distance early, land his power shot before fatigue becomes a factor, and control the pace, the experience gap, and the layoff become less relevant. Neither man has demonstrated serious grappling threat here, and neither is likely to go there. This fight almost certainly resolves standing. There are two separate fights happening on July 11th. One of them is the physical contest, the other is about meaning. For McGregor, the last clear thing the sport remembers is the image of him on a stretcher, his foot bent in a direction it was never meant to bend, being carried out of T-Mobile Arena in the same building where he is now returning. 5 years is a long time to carry that image. The narrative of a career, and McGregor has always been deeply aware of his own narrative, requires something different as its final chapter. A broken leg at the end of a fight he was losing to Dustin Poirier is not the ending anyone who watched him at his peak would have written for him. He has been publicly volatile during the layoff in ways that attracted criticism and at times genuine concern. He has been involved in controversies that have nothing to do with fighting. He has teased returns, announced opponents, and watched those plans dissolve. Whether any of that matters inside the cage is debatable. Fighters have come back from longer and stranger absences and performed, but it has been a 5-year window that created more questions about him than it answered. What does this fight need to be for him, specifically? It needs to be a performance, not just a win. A finish, or at minimum, a display that convinces the observer that the tools are still there. A decision victory after 5 rounds of measured work might satisfy the judges and do nothing to restore the particular weight his name used to carry. He needs to look like the fighter who ended an era at UFC 194 in 13 seconds. Whether that is possible is the most honest question in this fight. For Holloway, the emotional texture is different. He is not fighting a ghost. He is fighting a man he already beat once, in the form of the younger, more mobile McGregor of 2013, whose knee gave out in the second round and who spent the third on the ground. Holloway has said since that he was injured in the opening seconds of that fight and couldn't move the way he wanted, the scorecards didn't reflect that, but the memory lives with him and it has for 13 years. He has built one of the most legitimate resumes in featherweight history in the time since that loss. He is, by any fair reading of the record, the better professional fighter over the full arc of both careers. He has fought more, won more title fights, defended a belt multiple times, and beaten more current and former champions. The record is undeniable on that point. And yet, walking into UFC 329, he is the one coming off a loss. He is the one making his welterweight debut. He is the one fighting a man the public still treats as the larger star, because stardom in the UFC is not only earned, it is also manufactured, and McGregor's manufacturing ran for years at a scale the sport had never seen. There is something mildly absurd about a fighter of Holloway's accomplishment being positioned in any conversation as the one who needs to prove something, but that is nevertheless where the public framing has landed. Beating McGregor here, finishing him specifically, would close a circle that has been open since August of 2013. It would be the last word in a conversation that has been ongoing, quietly or loudly, for over a decade. The arena will be full. Las Vegas in July, International Fight Week, T-Mobile Arena. The same venue where McGregor's leg broke 5 years ago. The crowd for this fight will be enormous and divided, Irish flags and Hawaiian shirts. The same tribal energy that has followed both men for years. None of that decides the fight. What decides it is what happens in the first 90 seconds of the first round, when McGregor squares up with a man who has fought the best fighters on earth for the last 13 years without stopping, and we find out whether Conor McGregor's left hand still carries what it used to carry. That is the only question the cage can answer. 13 years ago, on a preliminary card in Boston, 2 unknown fighters met in a 3-round featherweight bout that no one thought would be remembered. One of them became the most commercially successful fighter in the history of the sport. The other became its most consistent and enduring craftsman. Someone who showed up, kept fighting, kept improving, and never needed to be the loudest person in the room to make his case. On July 11, 2026, at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, those 2 men will stand across from each other again. McGregor has 1 fight left in him, maybe more, but this one feels different. This one feels like a verdict. A 5-year return to the exact place where his last fight ended, against the one fighter he beat at the very beginning, who has spent 13 years becoming someone he never would have imagined having to face. Holloway doesn't owe McGregor anything. He doesn't owe this fight a moment of sentiment. He came to work, and somewhere in the middle of that T-Mobile Arena floor, between rounds and crowd noise and camera flashes and everything this sport has built around both of their names, 2 men are going to find out what they still are. The cage has a way of answering questions that nothing else can.